Okay. No, stop that. Okay. Welcome to the Kipaipai happy hour. And tonight we're super excited to have Sant Khalsa join us and give her presentation on fostering your relationships in the art world. Sant and I have known each other a very long time. And I'm sure she's going to talk about that in her talk tonight. But she has been a mentor of mine and also a mentor of many people who have gone through the master's program at Cal State San Bernardino. But in addition to that, a lot of artists have reached out to her. She's taught professional development, and her 50 plus years in her art career is really outstanding. I have had the pleasure of working with her on a number of exhibitions, both at MOA and the Riverside Art Museum, and then my own gallery as well. And I think I own several of your pieces too. We've produced a book together. We published Prana, A Life with Trees 2 years ago. But anyway, I'm gonna let Sant just kind of jump into her presentation, but please everyone, if you'll mute yourselves too, that would be very helpful. And then we'll have questions at the end. If you want to drop some questions in the chat, I'll keep my eye out on those. And if they're relevant to what she's talking about, we'll take a break real quick and cover those. So thank you and welcome, Sant Khalsa.
Thank you, Andy. Did you set this up so I can share my screen? Is it all?
Yes, you may share your screen.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I'd like this to be sort of a conversation among friends in a way, but I'm going to start by sharing some thoughts and experiences with you about art world relationships. And then we can go to a Q&A and have a discussion, like really open. And does this Friday thing usually go for an hour? How long is it usually? Is that about right?
Yeah, we try to keep it under an hour so that so if you went like 50 minutes, then that gives us 10 minutes at the end to like answer questions. And
yeah,
so
I think I'm gonna actually try to make it even shorter than that so we can really have some conversation.
Awesome.
I want to thank Andy, of course, for inviting me and for all that she does to support artists and art community. She's, you all know how incredible she is. I was going to start with my relationship with Andy. She kind of covered a little bit of it, but I'll mention a few things. I actually texted her today because at my age, my memory is not as great as I'd like it to be. So I was asking her about some dates, but we met September 1990. So that is 31 years ago when she was a student and I was the juror of the new photography exhibition at the LA County Fair. And that's the first time we met, and the first time that, and she was working as an assistant to Arden Alger, who was organizing the juried show, and I was a guest juror, and that was the first time we met. I'm having a hard time remembering our interactions between the year 1990 and let's see, the next time would be 2005. That's 15 years. And I'm not remembering those. That's when she was at the Riverside Art Museum. And I remember reconnecting with her there. Now, there may have been interactions in between, but for some reason, I'm not remembering them. But from 2005 on, so now that's another 16 years, we have worked together on numerous projects. As me as an artist, me as a writer, as a curator. And I think the most important thing is that we have connected over our love of art and nature, conceptual ideas, a similar aesthetic. We have reciprocated in terms of introductions, referrals, recommendations, and we just love each other as people, as women. We share so much. And that's sort of like the foundation of a relationship, a working relationship in the art world. We love to get together and just brainstorm about art and community and taking art to another level and, all of those things. And so we've had this very, very long-term relationship. So what I'm going to do now is share my screen. Let's see if I can get this to work. Okay. Let's see here. I got too much going on here. Can you see that? Can someone unmute and tell me?
Yes, I can see it, but it's not full screen. Put it on full screen.
Yeah, I'm going to do that. Okay. Slideshow, play. Is that full screen now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Betty. And let me see if I can move this other thing out of the way. There we go. So I'm going to talk about fostering art world relationships. And I'm starting with this photograph of myself standing in an exhibition of my work that had about 75 photographs from my Paving Paradise exhibition at the California Museum of Photography with Colin Westerbeck, who is a renowned photography curator and writer, and at the time was director of the California Museum of Photography at UCR. And we worked together on this exhibition for probably 2 to 3 years. And he had reached out to me because he had an interest in water, the subject of water in photography, and wanted to see my work. And we did a studio visit, and he said, let's work on a project together. And we built a relationship that really I learned from. I learned so much from him because he saw my work in a different way than I did. And I think that, had I not been open to his perspective, I don't think the relationship would have grown as it did. But it, and he was open to my perspective, and we worked really well together. And that relationship has grown over the years because he wrote an essay for the Prana Life with Trees, and he's done other writing about my work, and he's just we just have a very, very strong relationship. So, and I just love this picture. It was actually taken by a former student of mine, Ted Fisher, who is also an educator and a curator. So I thought, I just like it. Oh, let's see if I can get this go. So let's talk about art world and community. The art world is a connected network of creative individuals, collaborators, groups, and teams. In our art life, everyone is part of a large network who shares a passion for art. And there are so many different types of people that work in the art world. And it's so important to understand what they do and why they do it, and how we all work together as this network. And I've listed just a few of those different professional positions held. And, it's so important to create good karma with all one's actions. You can't foresee how everyone you meet, every seed you plant within your art life can grow into opportunities for you and for them, together, for others, collaboratively. It's really, really important. Our community and network. So we create, we share, we engage, we support. It's important to foster long-term relationships. There's no enduring instant success, And one thing to think about is your art network local, regional, national, or international? And I don't know if all of you think about that, but I think we're going to talk a little bit about that later. The artist's role. So the artist's role in this huge network is a researcher, an explorer, a visionary, a thinker, an innovator, a problem solver, a communicator, a maker, and a producer. Fostering reciprocal relationships that are based on mutual interest. This is our role. And respect, interest and respect, and the sharing of art and ideas supporting each other's careers and success. For me, it's never been just about me. It's been about art community. It's about supporting everyone. Because I know that I'm only one person with one way of expressing my experience, and that life experiences are vast and come from all different perspectives. So it's so important to support each other. Realization that you are not the center of the universe. This is so important in fostering relationships in the art world, that you are one star in a very large creative network and universe. And remember, no one wants to be in a one-sided relationship. People are very aware. If you reach out, I'm going to be talking about curators, collectors, gallerists, other artists, and writers. And if you reach out to someone and they know that it's all about you, that it's not going to be reciprocal, that they will know that. And people don't like to participate in one-sided relationships. So desirable qualities for fostering positive relationships in the art world. Professionalism, accessibility, dependability, kindness, generosity, patience, gratitude, discipline, work ethic, being collaborative, creativity, shared ideas and skill, willingness to hear feedback, listen and learn, and of course, much more. Whoops. Ooh. Professionalism is key. Follow through, respond to emails and phone calls within 48 hours, be on time and meet deadlines. Don't wait until the last minute. Be a good team player, a collaborator. Prepare for studio visits and meetings, read and follow instructions and guidelines. And I'm sure there's lots of other aspects of us than things that we can do to be professional. So before I talk about like establishing relationships, I know a lot of people have been interested in how do you build relationships with museums? I thought it would be really important to talk about what are all the art venues. I've been on the faculty of Kipaipai for a while, and I notice sometimes when I'm talking to artists that there's not a full understanding of art venues, the difference between museums and galleries, and types of museums and types of galleries. So I thought this would be a good opportunity, since we're going to be talking about fostering relationships with these venues and the people that work in these venues, understanding what they are. So there's different types of art venues. They're discipline and media specific, like ceramic museums and photography museums. There's period of art museums and venues, modern art, ancient art, all different types of periods of art. And there's different types of cultural venues, art venues, Japanese American National Museum, California African American Museum, etc. There's different types of exhibitions. There's juried with and without fees by jurors. There's curated from collections by curators. There's curated invitationals by curators, and there's artist organized exhibitions. Now, in terms of art museums, there's a big difference between art museums and galleries. The one thing that makes a museum is that they have collections. And that is sort of the big difference. Permanent collections and changing exhibitions is usually what comes out of an art museum. art is not typically sold in a museum. And they're funded by grants, donations of cash and art, admission fees and membership fees, also government funding when a government museum. So what types of museums are there? There's government-owned museums, there's federal museums like the Smithsonian, county and regional museums like LACMA, and city museums like Moa Lancaster. There are nonprofits with board of directors like the Museum of Contemporary Art. There's private museums that often become nonprofit museums like the Getty and the Broad. I don't know why the X is there, that's an error. And then there's university and college museums like UCLA Hammer, Cal State San Bernardino's RAFMA, and others. Then when we talk about art galleries and the other art venues, they typically have changing exhibitions. And of course, there's commercial galleries that are funded by sales. Other galleries can be funded by sales, grants, donations, admission fees, and membership fees. So there's lots of types of galleries. There's commercial galleries, right, that represent artists. We know what those galleries are in downtown LA and Santa Monica and Culver City. There's community galleries that are run by government or nonprofit. There's university and college galleries like Art Center College of Design. There's art association galleries that are like Gallery 825, the LA Art Association. There's artist-owned and run gallery. We have a gallery right here in downtown San Bernardino called the Little Gallery. There's collective galleries, artist-owned and run like Tag Gallery, nonprofits like LACE, airports, galleries, LAX, Ontario, alternative venues, coffee shops, pop-ups, homes, trucks, restaurants. There's gallery art fairs. And of course you have the ones, they're very expensive. Galleries are juried into them, pay fees, and then of course now we have new artist art fairs, like for instance, set up the startup art fair. And then there's community art fairs, which are mostly like festivals and markets. So there's so many different types of art venues for showing work and selling work. I want to focus a moment though on university and college art galleries and museums, because that's the world that I come out of. And I feel like a lot of Kipaipai artists have not realized what an incredible resource these are. There are numerous university art galleries and museums throughout the US, especially in California. They're looking for innovative, experimental, and cutting-edge work, educational components for campus and greater community engagement, lectures and workshops. Academic gallery directors and curators often move on to museums. So getting involved and working with gallery directors and curators in academic institutions often will then bring your work into a museum if they change jobs. Because often the way that your career grows is through building a relationship with curators. It amazes me. I can think of one particular example, and I don't want to mention names, so I'm just gonna not do that. An artist in Los Angeles who connected as a young artist with a young starting curator. And together, over a 20-year period, they built their careers together. Every time the curator went from one major museum to another major museum, they would take that work of that artist and would show that work in that museum. And eventually it helped to build that reputation of not only that artist, but of that curator, because the curator was championing that artist. So there was a reciprocal relationship going on. That artist got a Guggenheim, eventually became a MacArthur Fellow, And that curator is a very, very established, accomplished, and respected curator. So you could have one relationship with one curator that can champion you, and you champion them, and together you can build your careers. I should also mention here, let's see where I was here. Curazao moved to interdisciplinary. A lot of times university and college art galleries and museums, and of course, if it's a museum, it has a collection. Not all university and college venues have collections. Then they would be a gallery. They're interested in interdisciplinary programming, which brings other disciplines into the gallery or museum, such as natural and environmental sciences, creative writing, psychology, sociology, gender studies, and much more. It's about art and ideas, not about sales. And of course, there's artist-run spaces, and more, there's more and more, because we've lost a lot of brick and mortar commercial galleries. There's a lot more artists out there. And then, of course, there's online spaces as well as physical spaces. Artist becomes an entrepreneur and is taking control of their own career. And this is really, really kind of a key thing that's happening now in the art world. Okay, so let's get back to focusing on relationships. Artists are your friends, your peers, your mentors, and your community. They're not your competition. You learn from each other, you share opportunities, you introductions and referrals, collaborate, exhibit together, share studios. Every time I am called by a curator or emailed and ask if I will participate in an exhibition, the first thing I always ask is, well, tell me about the exhibition. What's the theme of the exhibition? You know, what's your concept for the exhibition? And then the next thing I always say is, who's in the exhibition? And after they tell me who's in the exhibition, I will give them 1 to 10 to 15 names of other artists that I think would be great in that particular exhibition. And hopefully they'll go out and they'll do their homework and they'll look up those artists, because I want to be in great company when I'm in a show. And I also want other artists who I share ideas with to get the opportunity to show their work. And so I think it's really important that we refer other artists and that we share and that we collaborate together. Curators. So curators, long-term building of relationships with curators is key here. And I have a few stories. I want to check my time here. I have a few stories I want to share. I want to share my story about, a lot of people have asked me how I got my work into the collection of LACMA. I have 20 pieces in their collection. And, you know, it's not something that happens overnight. It's something that happens over a lot of time and a lot of relationship building. I found out that there was going to be an exhibition. This was in the early 90s. I found out that there was going to be an exhibition called Photography Los Angeles Now. And I don't even remember how I connected with the two curators, photo curators at the time, which were Tim Ride and Robert Sobieszak. But I did connect with them and they did want to see my work. They wanted to do a studio visit. And I lived in San Bernardino and not in Los Angeles. And they were like, well, how are we going to see your work? We really don't want to schlep all the way to San Bernardino. And I was like, what am I going to do? Well, a good friend of mine opened her studio to me, basically moved all of her stuff out of the studio and said, you could have my studio for a couple of days and set up and meet with them there. I mean, how generous is that? Incredible, right? And so I did that, and that was the first time I met with them. And that relationship grew over time until I think it was how many years later, 10 years later, is when they did a purchase of my work. And then a year after the purchase, I had a gallery show at LACMA. So that doesn't happen overnight. That is something that builds over time. Another experience that I had was with a Getty curator, actually the founding curator of the photo collection at the Getty, which was Weston Neff. He's an emeritus curator now. And I met him at someone's home, and we just had a chat. And we talked, he told me about his interests in terms of photography, and I told him about mine. And then he learned about the Water in the West project that I was involved with, which was a collaboration of 11 photographers in the Western United States looking at water issues. And we invited Weston Neff to come to one of the photographers' homes, and we all brought our work, and we sat around for a couple of hours, and we talked about our work, and we shared it. And he was really interested in what I was doing, because it ended up that his father and his grandfather had been water engineers. And I was working on a project on photographing the building of the Seven Oaks Dam. So we had this connection. So we would get together and we would talk all about water infrastructure. And we weren't even really talking about photography. We were just talking about things that we were both really interested in. And then the next thing I know, he invited me to come and speak at the Getty, and this was in 2000, about the Carlton Watkins show. And he said that he was really interested in how my work, he saw my work as sort of a contemporary take on what Carlton Watkins was doing in California, who was one of the original photographers of California in the 1850s and 60s. And then the next thing I know, he's during a show for the Center for Photographic Art in Carmel. And I thought, well, he's during it. He knows my work. I'll apply, and just see what happens. And I won the award on the 100th anniversary of the birthday of Ansel Adams, which he juried, which was $10,000. And I was shocked. I had no idea, but this was all came from building relationship with someone that you respected over time, them getting to know you and your work, you getting to know what they're interested in, and how these things work together. I have lots of other stories, but I'm gonna go on. Maybe we can talk about some of them after. So there's a difference between museum, gallery, and independent curators. That's really important to understand in terms of building your relationships with curators. Museum curators are focused on research, museum curating, and building collections, while gallery curators it really depends on what the focus of that gallery is in terms of what they're curating. And independent curators tend to find their specialty. And often if you connect with an independent curator, you'll find that you'll be curated into numerous exhibitions that they curate if you build a relationship with them, because they're curating for lots of different venues. And like in my case, where I deal with environmental issues, if I've connected with curators who are interested in that, they're going to curate for different venues and bring my work in. And so we actually get to work a lot. So in terms of your relationships with these curators, you want to reach out and meet those who you believe would be interested in your work and based on their past projects. Attend openings and other functions, especially fundraisers, show support. Apply to calls for juried and curated exhibitions to get your works in front of these curators. Mail them printed brochures, catalogs, or books about your work. Stay in communication, but not being pushy, being patient, no expectations of responses, only making contact maybe 2 or 3 times a year through email and mail, unless you are in a personal communication working relationship with them on a project, or have a monthly or quarterly newsletter that they've expressed interest in receiving. They are typically working with and in contact with numerous artists and other art professionals, juggling many tasks every day. Very, very busy, and you need to respect their time. Okay, let's see, I'm moving over to the next one here. There we go. Oops. Museum curators and collections. Okay, so in terms of museums, would your work fit within the collection mission? Think about that. Do your research. How would your work add to their collection? Curators have expertise that are either discipline specific or periods of art, or they're generalists in smaller museums. Curators tend to focus and often work with the same artist several or many times, as I mentioned. Starting and fostering relationships with curators is not only going to be beneficial to you, it's beneficial to them. They're looking for artists to work for, just like you're working for curators to work with, exhibitions to be in, to be part of collections. What makes an artwork museum worthy? Well, the concept, the idea, the quality of the work and the body of work, innovative ideas and or approach and or techniques, relevance to contemporary art and art history. That's sort of the underlying, that's how you end up in an art museum. Your exhibition record, your critical reviews, and it's ultimately determined by the curators and the acquisition committee, and it's often funded or donated by a donor or collector, because most museums have very small acquisition budgets or none at all, which is something that most artists don't understand. So I'm going to go on to the collectors, and then I want to talk a little bit more about this and the way this all works. Oh, collectors. Collectors are often involved with museums. They serve as board of directors and donate artworks. Those who have donated work, their names appear on the labels on the walls that they donated. Collectors play a huge role in getting work in the museum collections. Small or no acquisition budgets. Acquisition committee approval is needed. Most of museum budgets goes to staff and overhead, not acquisitions. Some museums will take donations of art directly from artists. Tax deductions totally differ for artists and collectors. Artists, we get to deduct the cost of our materials. Collectors get to donate the actual value of the work. So this is how it all works. If a museum wants a piece of art, because they have a very small acquisition budget, often they're going to depend on a collector to purchase the work and donate it to the museum. Often it will be purchased by the gallery that represents you, or it will be purchased directly from the artist. All these deals are made so that artists rarely get paid the actual retail value of their artwork when the artwork is being purchased to end up in a collection. It doesn't matter if it's being purchased by the museum directly through their acquisition budget, or it's being purchased by a collector to be given to a museum. When it's being purchased by a collector to be given to a museum, often the collector is hoping that they will be able to get the work at a discounted cost, because they're going to help get your work into that museum collection. If your work is in a museum collection, it then ups the value of the work and it helps you to have more sales. So this is sort of this little, behind the scenes business that goes on that a lot of artists are not aware of. So I felt like it's important for you to know that. Relationships with your collectors are very important. One of your most important relationships. These are people who love your work enough to purchase it and live with it, and maybe see it, and maybe they see it as a worthy investment because of its value. May be willing to donate to museum collections and introduce you to curators. It's important to correspond with your collectors. It's important to have a copy of the invoice. It's actually California law that your gallery give you a copy of the invoice, and you should have the name and address of everyone who purchases your work. But remember, you're working with your gallery. So, if you want to have contact with your collectors, make sure that your gallery feels good about that they understand that you're not trying to sell your work to them behind their back or anything, that you just want to build these relationships with your collector, and that you'll send them to the gallery to buy the work. But this is very important to have this kind of relationship with your collector. I'm in an exhibition right now that's traveling in the UK, and I don't want the work to have to come back to the US. So I have a collector here in the United States that also lives in the UK. They're between those two places, LA, actually Palm Springs in the UK. So that collector is actually helping me to find a museum that will take this work once it ends its traveling through 3 exhibitions in the UK and become part of that museum collection. I could not do that without the collector to support that. Writers and critics, that's another relationship that is really important. Because they're critical to helping you to gain attention for your work and your success. Getting work reviewed and featured in print, arts publications like Artillery and Art Forum or LA Weekly, and online. Also catalogs, books with publishers or self-published. I notice on Kipaipai artist resumes, there's too few art reviews and publications. Not all of you, but a lot of you. It's very important to collectors, galleries, and museum curators to see your work in print and see reviews of your work. Publications for every show, you should have that with essay by a curator, an art historian, a critic, or an art writer. Gives a longer life to every show you do and a place in contemporary art and eventually art history. One of the best relationships I've been able to build in my career is with Betty Brown, who is here right now. And Betty Brown is a curator, a writer, an art historian, an educator. And I met Betty in probably around 1994. Maybe before that, and we worked together on an exhibition that she curated called Muses. And we have not only had a great working relationship, but we're really good friends. And we share not just a love for art, but we have common interests when it comes to spirituality and nature and feminism and so many other things. And she wrote this incredible essay for my Prana book. I am so grateful for that. And she's written about my work many times. And and I think that she enjoys doing that as much as I enjoy having her work with me. Okay, let's move on. I'm actually not going to talk about gallerists. I'm just
Wait, son, I just can't let you just drop that. I just have to say, even if I'm interrupting, thank you so much for saying that and for being who you are and for calling all the listeners' attention to the fact that these relationships with curators and writers and museum staff need to be true, authentic friendships.
Yes.
To last for 10 and 20 and 30 years. And so you have to be real with that person, and that person has to be real with you. And if in that reality you share a lot, that's golden. And Sant, you have always been golden for me. We even like the same clothes. So
that's right.
That's perfect.
Yes.
All right. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Thank you thank you so much, Betty. So, you know, what she said, it's so important to be authentic. It's so important to spend the time and work with people that you enjoy, that you respect, that you care about. And, you know, I always say it's the people in the trenches that are really like the most important. Like I had a wonderful phone call today with the, I guess she would be the registrar at the New Mexico Museum of Art in Santa Fe. My work was in a show that just closed there. And she was calling me to tell me that, you know, they're getting ready to ship the work. You know, that was what she was calling me for. But we were on the phone for a half hour. I've never met her, but we'd been on the phone and just had these great conversations. And I love people and I love art. And so, you know, to me, that's the best part of being alive, is to be able to share your love of art with people in the community. So when it comes down to your reputation, your working relationships are so important. Create an excellent reputation. You scar your reputation and everyone will find out. Once you have a bad experience with one art professional, they won't want to work with you again, and they will tell others. The art world seems large, but when it comes to relationships and gossip, it's very small. No one wants to work with a prima donna, artists that are difficult, flaky, and don't follow through. Being kind and respectful to everyone, especially those in the trenches, like I said, like preparators, they work with everyone. The preparators, I think they are like so important. Okay, that's my little presentation. Okay, I'm gonna stop share here. So you can ask questions verbally if you'd like, or make any comments or additions. I mean, I have so much more I could talk about, but yes, I see Jane. Hi, Jane.
Sant, thank you so much for a wonderful presentation. I put it in the chat, but one of the questions I had for you, because I had never heard about the California law that galleries had to provide
copy of your invoice,
and I believe you said the name and address of the buyer.
That's right.
Do you have the name of the law or possibly a link to where I could find that?
No, but I'm sure if you Google, you'll find it.
Okay, well, thank
Andy, and maybe Andy can address that.
Is that a relatively new law, or
no,
certain gallery?
No, it's not a new law.
Interesting.
But I would say, after a very long conversation with Melissa Morgan at the last Kipaipai workshop, a lot of galleries don't want to share that information because they don't want you to know who the collector is, because the artist will often approach that collector without the gallerist and then try to make deals on the side. I don't think all artists do that. I think there are a handful of artists that have done that, and it's unfortunate that galleries kind of like base that relationship on some kind of bad bad relationships, but or bad experiences. But yeah, you should be able to get and the invoice doesn't necessarily have to have the address of the collector, but it does have to list the name of the person.
It does have to list the name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the amount it's sold for, I presume.
Yes, it has to
Yes,
show,
yeah.
yes, it has to show that. It has to show if there was any discount. It has to show what the, how much it was sold for, how much the artist is, the artist will be paid. It has to have everything.
The other thing that you want to remember too, and I don't know, in California it's not a problem, but places like Missouri, St. Louis charges a tax on anything that's retail. And so in addition to the tax that the gallery would pay, the artist is also responsible for that. And so you might get a bill later, years later, saying, oh, or get arrested in the airport, like Alex, that happened to Alex. He got off the plane and they're like, we have a warrant for your arrest because you were tax evasion for the city of St. Louis. You want to find out. So if you're working with a gallery outside of California, and find out what the laws are for that gallery as well, because those taxes, you are responsible for that. And you're lucky if the gallery pays for it for you, but usually they don't.
Thank you.
Yeah. The, it's really, what I have always done is if I have the name of the collector, I'll give you an example. A lot of times I will donate work for fundraisers, right? If I support the institution, I will donate work. And then they send you a letter and it'll say, the letter will come from the nonprofit and it'll say, your work was purchased by so-and-so, right? And it was purchased for this amount of money, right? You should get that also, always, if you donate your work. That should come from a nonprofit. And what I've done in the past is if they don't give me the address, I just Google the person, and most art collectors you'll find them by Googling them, and you can find just about anybody's address. And I send a personal note, a handwritten note, thanking them for supporting that organization through the purchase of my work. And if they're interested in seeing more of my work or doing a studio visit, I'd be open to that. So, that's another way to sort of get your work out there to a collector base, right? Is through nonprofits. Okay, sure. Anyone just unmute yourself and ask questions, please, or comments, or
I have a,
go ahead.
Question, Sant.
Hi, Jody.
Hi, I loved your presentation, and I loved how kind and gentle you are. I think you're going to be my new hero. I'm afraid I'm too aggressive or too pushy, but I'm out in Hawaii and there isn't any, what's here is it pretty much. And I used to have a gallery, and I watched how the not-for-profits let's start over. There was a heyday of contemporary art here when we had our contemporary museum. We had a lot of people behind it and, supporting the artists and buying their work. And then what happened is a lot of the not-for-profits started selling art at their events, but they would offer our art at half price.
Yeah, that's
auctions. And if, it's one thing and so the artists would get paid, but the value of our work would go down. And having a gallery also during that time, I saw how we would put on these great shows, we'd introduce these artists, and then the galleries, the museums were kind of in competition, or the not-for-profits, and they asked, well, which artists are you gonna have? Or the collectors who would support our artists in our gallery switched to supporting the not-for-profit and getting it for half price. And we've actually had people stand there and say, don't bid on that person's work because that's for this certain, more important person so they get it at a low price, basically.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought this up. There's a lot of artists who are concerned about having their work in auction at all, not just, so, for nonprofits, but any auction, because a lot of times an auction work can be devalued.
Mhm.
Okay, so it is something to consider for sure. One of the things though, if you ever do sell your work out of your own studio, okay, and you sell your work for less than the retail price, you need to make sure that the invoice for the collector states the retail value and that you discounted it.
Okay.
Okay, really important. So if a piece is $1,000 retail and you've sold it to them for $600, you say that it was discounted for 40%, so that the invoice actually has the full value. That's really, really important. And, as long as you're not doing a lot of auctions, or a lot of nonprofits, I mean, I only do a few, maybe 2 or 3 a year. It's not going to devalue your work. But if you're getting your work out, if your work is in auction all the time, in either auction by auctioneers or by nonprofits, and it's constantly being sold lower than it, that can devalue your work. So you have to be careful.
Yeah. I have trouble selling my work for not the value. Maybe that's why I don't sell that much anymore.
Well,
I'm not in galleries. I'm not, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to talk a little bit about relationships with gallerists. I'll talk a little bit. I mean,
Okay.
On that topic, I have a question.
Yeah.
What do you do with a gallerist who wants to represent your work, but they want an exclusive representation?
Okay. Well, when you use the word exclusive,
Mm-hmm.
okay, there's a lot of caveats to exclusive. Exclusive, they say you're the only gallery you can be represented in Los Angeles, or the entire United States, or the world.
I think it was where I live in Orange County.
Okay, that's not unusual.
Yeah.
That's not unusual for a gallery to ask for exclusivity in a certain location. That's not unusual.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you should ask them, if you want me to show exclusively with you and you want to show with them,
Mm-hmm.
if there's another gallery in town that would like to show my work,
Mm-hmm.
right? Would you be willing to negotiate that? Not you, they negotiate it, so that basically that other gallery shows the work and your gallery gets a percentage. They make a deal. This is what galleries do. They make a deal, right? So they may split their profit. One might take 20, might one take 30 of that 50% or whatever. But you should find that out when you're, if you're an exclusive with a gallery requires a contract. And you want to make sure that all of that stuff is clearly put in that contract. And remember, that's only in a commercial setting. That doesn't mean you can't show in nonprofits, university, colleges. I mean, you need to get clarity on that, because that's just in terms of the commercial sale of your work. That's not if your work is in a museum. That's ridiculous. Why couldn't you show your work? It's not being sold.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Oh, I was going to talk gallery experience. So
yeah, I'd love to see your slide.
What was that?
I'd love to see your gallery slide.
Oh, my gallery.
You went.
I passed it.
By.
Just in terms of relationships with gallerists, you have to realize that it's a partnership, okay? And that they are spending time and money on you, right? That's why they get 50%. Some really top-end galleries get 60%, right? But you need to make sure that you work with a gallery that you respect, that you really like the gallerist. I mean, like you really like, they could be your best friend, that you enjoy spending time with them, you trust them, you have an open, honest relationship. These are the things that were on my slide. I personally only had 2 really serious gallery relationships in Los Angeles. And the best gallery relationship I had was with Acuna Hansen in Chinatown for 10 years. And the way that I ended up in that gallery, which was a really, really excellent, high quality gallery, was because Chris Acuna Hansen and I had been friends for 20 years previous. And I would never even think of asking to be in his gallery. And he didn't even think of asking me to be in his gallery. And he got married, and his wife said to him, who was his partner in the gallery, said, how come we don't represent Sant's work in our gallery? And he said, never really thought of that. And next thing I know, they asked me, and I worked with them for 10 years. And, and we had such a great relationship because we were such close friends. I mean, they paid me the day that they got paid. They sold a lot of work. They took the work to art fairs, and my work is not very sellable. So I thought that was amazing. That's why I've never pursued a lot of gallerists, because I tend to make work that's more about ideas and I'm not that interested in marketing my work. I'm really more interested in selling and showing the work and having it be in museum collections so that it lives over time. And I've had the advantage of, and the privilege to be a professor all my life. So I didn't need the income for my work to survive. I could just focus on my work in terms of my ideas and being experimental and, and expressing my ideas and not worry about sales. I just didn't need to do it. But when I worked with the gallery, and then once that relationship was over, when Acuna Hansen decided to close, not because they weren't successful, they're incredibly successful. They did it for personal reasons. They wanted to spend more time with their kids. I know this is all being recorded. I think it's okay that I'm saying this publicly. They want to spend more time with their son. I haven't really wanted to do anything seriously with a gallery since, because I don't think I could have that kind of relationship with another gallerist. It was just such an incredible relationship. And it was family. I loved every single artist in that gallery. Every show, we'd go to each other's shows every month, and we'd have a party after. I mean, it was family. When that gallery closed, we all cried. We were so upset. Not because it was because it was like our home away from home. Yeah. So we're at 8:01. Any other questions? Makes me sad.
What? Yeah, I have one more question. You talked
Oh, Jody. Okay. Yeah.
I'm sorry. You talked about how with a curator, the relationship is a two-way street.
Yes.
And so you talked about the one curator bringing the artist along and championing that artist, I believe you said.
Yes.
How does the artist champion the curator? Is it by showing, there's a new artist here, or is it?
Yeah. I mean, curators have the opportunity to build their careers through explaining your work through their writing, interpreting their work by the way that they show your work, interpreting your work that's what they do, right? They take artwork, bring it together to be able to make a statement, to express their ideas. They can put it in historical context. They can put it in contemporary context. They can talk about social issues. That is what, or they can just talk about art issues. And that is their love and what they do. And if you find the right marriage between the right artist and the right curator, that marriage actually builds both careers.
Okay, thank you.
Curator, Andy or Betty, want to make any comment about that? From the curator, I mean, I'm a curator as well, but not.
Did you just ask me a question?
I did.
Oh,
it's
shit.
Okay. It's okay. You're on a date. It's okay.
What did you say? I'm sorry.
I was talking, Jody asked the question about how is it reciprocal for the curator? I was talking about how curators and artists, if it's the right match, they both build their relationships together, build their careers together. And how, that it's the curator, the putting art together, putting artists together is how they express themselves and express their ideas. And they build their careers through bringing through their, their artistic eye.
Yes,
right?
and one of the things that's really important to note about that is you're a younger curator who would most likely be independent and is not working for an organization yet on staff. That's how they build their career, right? Is like working with artists and organizing artists' ideas and visuals in their own idea. So when you think about that as an artist, you should also be considering your relationships with curators that are independent curators that are building their career as well, because they're going to take you. I mean, I can say this from my own personal experience. As I moved up in my field, I took a lot of artists with me, and they took me with them. Right. As they also excelled in their career with, moving into like their relationships with LA Louvre and some of the higher A-level galleries, that also brought me with them. And so then when I ended up, in the museum or the next museum or whatever, I brought those relationships with me, and now, then they're validated, of course, because now I'm with an institution that the gallery wants to work with. So it's really important. So when you're not just artist friends that want to curate, but actual young curators, when they want to work with you, work with them. It's it's worth it.
Yes, for sure. I think back about early on in my own career. I was here, I came from New York to California, to the LA area in the 70s, really established my career in the 80s. And there's all of these curators, all these young curators and independent curators, or curators that were in either internships or assistant curator positions at major museums or university galleries or whatever, that I established relationships in many cases just as friends. And now those museums are the directors of some of the top museums in the world, right? And we have continued relationships, right? And I think it's so important to realize that it's something that those relationships grow like over so many years. I mean, some of my closest relationships with curators now, those relationships are like 30 to 35 years old. And I may not be in their collections yet, but I will be.
Yes, you will be. Yeah, you
will. It's just, and I am very, very patient, extremely patient. It's not like it's going to happen overnight. It never was going to happen overnight. I never believed it would happen overnight when I was in my 20s. And now, a year and a half, I'll be 70 years old.
Consider too, all of you thinking about art history, consider how many artists were in museum collections while they were alive.
Yeah.
Not very many.
I think we should fake our deaths.
Awesome, Jody. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
But I mean, think about that. Most of the, genres that happen within art history, we don't even really talk about, or we don't really know what those are for 50 years. That's when we look back and say, oh, this artist's work was relevant during this time, and it speaks to that moment in a culture, in, politically, in a kind of world economic environment. You're not going to see that for 50 years. It's not going to happen, So you're making work right now expecting to get in a museum collection, but that's not going to happen. The sales are great, and if you get to the right collector, then it's likely that work will be donated at some point by the collector to the museum, because that's how museum collections are mostly built. Right. But it's not likely to happen in your lifetime.
No, I mean, in my case, I've been working on making work specifically focused on environmental issues now for over 40 years. And now everybody is doing exhibitions on climate change. Everyone. I mean, it's just like, right? And I've been doing it for over 40 years. So, it's like all of a sudden everybody is like contacting me. There's this show that's traveling, that's in the UK. The curator of that, who I have such great respect for, Liz Wells, who is a photo curator in the UK, who is focused on environmental issues and writes books on environmental issues. I was just so happy and so grateful that she brought me into this project that she's working on. And now my work gets to travel the UK. I've known her for, I don't know how many years, probably at least 15 years. And this is the first time she chose to put my work in this show. And now she's writing a book, and I'm going to be in the book. And because she brought my work to the UK, there's all these other UK writers and critics and who are contacting me, and they're interested in the work, and it just kind of like grows like that. But it's not like I just really love and respect Liz Wells for what she's done, and I just am so grateful that she decided to include my work. That's just how it works. I went to all her lectures. Anytime she would give a talk, I wanted to hear what she had to say. It was that's just what you do, Yes. Oh, Stevie Love, one of the women I love.
I saw. Oh, you guys, you're so sweet. So I'm always making new work, which is of course very important to me personally. But because of this book that I took, like 3 years to put together, it's very detailed information about how to build an adobe house in LA County, how to get through the permit process, right. The whole thing. It's very detailed about materials and the process and all of that. Thanks to Andy. Hello.
Yeah, she's there.
She's such a great supporter of all of artists. She's just like, my hero, obviously. Because of Andy, I have Shayna writing an essay, and I have Tony Pinto designing the book. Turned out gorgeous. But what's so interesting to me is I've always had a connection to Patricia Watts. We've known each other for years. Mm-hmm. And of course, her space, her
Eco Art Space. I work with her.
I know Sant is very connected to her. Yeah. So of course, this book fits perfectly the philosophy of Eco Art Space. Yes. So she asked me if she could sell the books, discounted to her members and all that. And we've just been talking about it seriously over the past 2 days. So I'm super happy to be associated with her, because there's such a close connection between, building an ecologically smart building using mud.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
And what do I want to say? an architect from LA found out somehow about our house and came and had lunch with us here. We invited him out for lunch one day with me and Bruce, showed him around the place. Can you believe this? He has a couple of contracts to build adobe houses in Pioneer Town.
Oh
That's
my
awesome.
God, that's awesome.
Oh my God. Okay, effing amazing. Okay,
Yeah.
that's San Bernardino County rather than LA County was really
Right.
tough for us to get the permit. And that's all documented in my book. So if people want to build an adobe house, they could build look at my book and find lots of like tricks and, information about how to get through it.
That's awesome. Yeah, well, I'll get to see it in Pioneer Town. That's
Super
my
excited
world.
about that whole thing about connecting with Patricia and Eco Art Spaces, like such a great, like it fits perfectly.
And that's
So I'm
San's point
happy.
about this whole presentation is that you don't know where those connections are going to come from.
Right.
So that you need
Right.
to continue to foster those relationships, and then and there's always a crossover. Someone knows somebody else. The art world is small.
Right.
It seems like it's really big, but it's not. It's really
Yeah.
small.
Right.
Yeah.
And within the serious art world, it's very small. And you're going to find those connections. And I think tonight, her presentation clearly, I mean, it was a freaking amazing presentation.
Oh,
Like
thank you.
I'm going to have to like watch the recording several times because there was
Okay.
a lot of really great information in there. But I think we're getting on 8:15 here, and I
see
don't want to
that.
hold everybody else up, but I do want to say thank you so much to Sant. It's been a great night, and it is recorded. It will be on the kipaipai.com website in the videos. It's also on the Kipaipai YouTube channel. I will post it in the IamAnArtist.net platform, so you guys will all get the link there. If you don't see it there, you can just go to kipaipai.com and find it. Joy will get it posted. But I know Sant is she's really great. She's a great resource, one being one of our faculty for Kipaipai. If you have additional questions on this or other things pertaining to professional practice, you can email her. She will
Yes.
respond.
I was just going to say, email me santkhalsa.art@gmail.com, and I will definitely respond to you. I just want to follow up on something that Stevie said about Eco Art Space, because she's working with Patricia Watts, and Patricia Watts is a curator who has focused on environmental and ecological issues for her entire career. And I'm a curator for Eco Art Space. I host a program one Thursday, the last Thursday of every month, called Tree Talk, Artists Speak for Trees. And if you want to find out more about the program that I host or Eco Art Space, you can also contact me, because I work closely with Patricia Watts. Again, a relationship that's been fostered over 25 years of working with her. She actually did the interview for Prana Life with Trees. Yeah, so everybody is connected. We're all connected. And it's so important that we support each other, and remember that every seed you plant, you don't know how it will grow, where it will grow, how it will connect. And remember, this is huge mycelium network under the roots of trees, and everything is connected and everything nurtures. All the trees nurture and plants each other. So that's what we are,
Beautiful.
Thank you, Sant. Thank you.
You.
All right, you guys,
you.
don't forget the residency applications are open for the Hawaii Kipaipai residency, and Sant and I will be posting the Joshua Tree residency in the next month or so for next fall. We also will be doing a workshop in person in Ojai in January. And I will send out shortly announcements to when that application process opens. So hopefully we'll hear from all of you soon, and have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Andy.
Thank you,
Bye.
everybody.
Aloha.
Thank you very much.